It is game day. Packers and Lions, one of the best Thursday night football games we have seen all season. And we are here to bring you the best pregame show out there here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show presented by the FFPC on the Better Sports Network. Follow the Better Sports Network on the X at Better Network. And of course, you can follow me, Eric Balkman, at Eric Balkman, both on X and Blue Sky. And of course, the Fantasy Football Players Championship at myffpc.com at FFPC. You also know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown and the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour on the FFPC YouTube and socials. Hi, hello, and welcome to Thursday Night Fantasy Football in America. Here to bring you everything that we can about Week 14. I know it is championship week in the FFPC and the Fantasy Pros Championship. And who better to bring you his award-winning advice? I assume it's award-winning, Pat. Pat, you've won awards before. Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros. Welcome in.
Thanks for having me, Eric. I just give myself awards, so that takes care of
No, come on. You've got to. I know you've won industry awards before. Don't just give yourself an award because here's the thing. So I know that you're not only doing rankings with Fantasy Pros, but I know you're offering advice on that website. Obviously, your X account at Fitz_FF. And what else are you doing for Fantasy Pros? Because I know it's a bunch.
A lot of shows. 4 shows at least during the week. That's just regular redraft shows plus dynasty shows. Pretty soon we're going to be rolling into like golf betting podcasts, and I do a little of that too. So
Good for you.
Yeah, a lot of podcasts, a lot of articles. I'll be ready to catch up on sleep in January, but not for a while yet.
Yeah, I think it never ends for you, quite frankly. And then you're doing a lot with betting pros too, right?
Yes, sir. I wish I was doing a little bit better on the props. What's up, Dominic? So I've got a weekly prop article that I was kind of working on before I joined you, and always doing betting pro stuff. Some getting ready for golf season with the BP.
And Dom Gazzetti, by the way, who you just said hi to, he says his dad is a Packers fan. He's happy to see us two cheeseheads here. Yes, if you didn't know, Pat is a Packers fan, a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Yes,
Shout
sir.
out to the Badgers. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right. Got it. And Dom is a guy that I've drafted next to at the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Dom's a guy that I've hung out with, had a couple of good nights in Louisville with him as well on fantasy football weekends. So Dom's a great guy, and I'm glad he's here with you tonight, watching, viewing, listening, whatever you're doing to ingest this content. We appreciate it. So coming up on tonight's show, Pat and I are going to go around the NFL. We're going to talk about all the hot button issues heading into Week 14. We're also going to give you a Thursday night football preview. Again, what I meant, 9-3 Green Bay, 11-1 Detroit. The winner of this game, you could make this pretty strong case that they might have the inside path to win the NFC North this year, the toughest division in pro football. And obviously there's a lot of fantasy questions that we need to answer prior to kickoff tonight. We are going to go through Pat Fitzmaurice's FFPC Weekly Challenge lineup for Week 14, which is going to be fun as well. And we'll do some start or sits involving, but not limited to, Travis Etienne, Xavier Worthy, Noah Gray, Russell Wilson, and much more. That is what's coming up on tonight's show. We'll take you into the second quarter of the Thursday night football game tonight, and it's going to be a great time. And we're so glad that you're hanging out with us and watching tonight. Okay, let's kick things off tonight with the FFPC Weekly Challenge. There is no draft. There is no salary cap. Choose 10 or 12 players and watch them ride through the weekend's games. If you want kickers and defenses, you can do it. Pat, we're going to get to your lineup in the second hour. Did you do kickers and defenses? I don't think you did, right?
I did not. I did not.
Okay, that's fine. That's
okay.
You don't have to amend it. We're going to leave it as is because I know you spent some time on this. We're gonna let that gestate. We're going to let it cook. And by the time that we get to it tonight, it'll be ready to win a lot of money. In fact, if you dupe Pat's lineup tonight, you could win up to $2,500. Enter for as little as $35. 10, 30, and 100 team contests over at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Shout out to our producer, Matt Deutsch, who is keeping things running for us tonight. Pat, let's kick it off with a guy. I just did my local fantasy football show here. And my co-host, God bless him, he loves fantasy football, but he's like, Sincere McCormick? Who is this guy? And I think a lot of us sort of have that approach to the Raiders run game right now. We know Abdullah. We know Zamir White. We know Alexander Madison. We know, quite frankly, a little bit of Dylan Lobby. But Sincere McCormick has hit the scene. This past week on Black Friday against the Kansas City Chiefs, he got 12 carries. He turned them into 64 yards. He also caught 2 passes for a yard in their 19-17 loss to Kansas City. The FFPC waivers are going to close here shortly for the Fantasy Pros Championship and the main event. There's not a lot of players out there because a lot of players, who are cut after week 11 get locked. McCormick is one of those players that, by and large, was not locked in a lot of leagues. He got picked up in a bunch last night. What do you expect from McCormick this week and sort of going forward in 2024?
I expect an earnest audition for him to maybe take over as the lead early down back for the Raiders. I think they know what they have in Zamir White and Alexander Madison, and can't be real thrilled with what they've gotten. I mean, the Raiders backfield has produced less fantasy value than just about any other this year. So it sounds like Antonio Pierce wants to see more of Sincere McCormick. We know Amir Abdullah is just, an older, smaller passing down back. He's going to go back to that role and not be fantasy relevant. So I do think McCormick has a chance to steal early down work here from Madison, from Zamir White, and possibly be a fantasy viable guy down the stretch.
Would you, he's not in the classification of league winner, is he, Sincere McCormick?
I don't think so. It just because the pedigree really isn't there as a guy who's just sort of bopped around on practice squads for a couple of years and just wasn't really highly regarded coming out of college. But, I think they liked what they saw from him last week. He ran pretty hard. And I don't know if the Raiders offense is going to produce a late season league winner like
right.
that,
Yeah. And that's true of that. That's true of any of the Raiders running backs. Like, it's just, there's not enough there to say, hey, let's go all in on this guy. Now, I will say, and this will be my caveat for the next 3 weeks in the FFPC and the Fantasy Pros main event and the Fantasy Pros Championship. If you have to make up 100 or 150 spots, right, and you have to go for broke. We saw this with the Go Bills franchise a couple of years ago, where they know at that point, I think it was like week 16, and they knew at that point they needed to make up 50 spots or whatever. And they ended up starting, and I can't remember who it was. It was a running back. I want to say for Kansas City. I could be wrong on this, but they went for broke, and that guy ended up getting, like 3 touchdowns or something that week. Okay, then we can talk about you need to go for you need to shoot for the moon. You need to swing for the fences. That at that point, yeah, I get it. I think right now it's still too early to be making a McCormick play or any other McCormick-like play.
That Chief guy wasn't Sharkandrick West, was it?
No, honestly, it was not Sharkandrick West. And I'm going to tell you a Sharkandrick West story. So my Friday night show that I do, my FFPC co-founder, Dave Gerzak, he used to co-host with me, and he just mentioned Sharkandrick West on Twitter at the time, now X. He mentioned Sharkandrick West on Twitter about how fast is 40 time. And Sharkandrick West replied back to him and said, oh, actually, it wasn't a 4.4. It was a 4.13 or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, he corrected him. And Dave, in his genius, said, oh, I'm sorry about that. Hey, we do the show on Friday night. Would you want to come on? This is before he was on the Chiefs. And he said, sure. So he was our guest. We had him on for a good half hour. And it was great. And then he got drafted by the Chiefs, and it was fantastic. And ever since he got drafted by the Chiefs, we reached out to him several times to come back on, and he never did. And so that was the last we ever heard of Sharkandrick West. And he's not in the league anymore, but I'd love to have him on and talk with him again, because it was pretty cool, chopping up, especially for, you, Pat, being a dynasty guy. It was cool to hear from a guy who went through that process, a running back who went through the combine, went through a pro day, and then sweated out whether he's going to be drafted or whether he was going to sign an undrafted free agent contract. So that was a lot of fun, and certainly something we'll look forward to coming up in May and June, when a lot of these other guys are looking for free agent contracts that will matter in fantasy football in 2025. Speaking of mattering in football in 2025, That's kind of where we're at with Trevor Lawrence right now. Ian Rapoport from the NFL Network has reported that Trevor Lawrence is not only expected to undergo season-ending surgery, he has been placed on IR and will not return in 2024. That means that the incomparable Mac Jones will be running things for the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. Yes, I know. Try to quell your cheers a little bit, Fantasy Nation. But what does this mean for guys like Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, Evan Engram, Brian Thomas Jr., all these players that have been, fringe or every week starters for many of us playing high stakes fantasy football? What are your expectations, Pat, going forward, now knowing that it's not Lawrence throwing to him, it's going to be Mac Jones for the duration of the 2024 campaign?
Yeah, I think these fringe starters are maybe just a little bit more fringy now. Eric, like I think they're still usable. I'm cautiously optimistic that Mac Jones can at least be competent enough to float the value of Brian Thomas Jr., Evan Engram, and maybe those two backs, although that's kind of a messy situation. Yeah. But so yeah, like you just hope that he doesn't render Brian Thomas Jr. completely unusable, because I think that's the jewel here. The one guy that people would like to be able to use with confidence in the fantasy playoffs, and we'll see if they're going to be able to do that.
I want to go to the YouTube chat right now. Number one, Fantasy Bro saying it was Zonovan Knight. It was Zonovan Knight. Thank you. Zonovan Bam Knight. That was the guy that they ended up playing, I believe, over Zay Jones. That was the two guys they were considering for their final flex spot in the FFPC main event. Ultimately, they decided on Zay Jones, and I think it was Nick Costantino that said, guys, let's revisit this. And then they ended up playing Knight, and God bless them because it worked out. Back-to-back main event champions. Great stuff. I'll go through a couple of the questions we're getting in the YouTube chat right now. Icavelli. I just hear Machiavelli every time I hear that. Shout out to Tupac. Hi, guys. Would you trade away Jameson Williams for Jerry Jeudy in a PPR dynasty? Thanks a lot. I got news for you. We're going to be talking about both these players throughout the show, but let's frame it right now, Pat. Dynasty only right now. Jameson Williams or Jerry Jeudy, who would you rather have? And I'll preface this by saying, for me, this just got a lot more interesting over the last 7 days.
Yeah, it really has. Jeudy has just been popping so much. I think I would still rather ride with JMO here, Eric. I just he has lived up to his draft pedigree this year with his playmaking ability, and I know the target counts are maybe not ideally what we'd like to see, but he's done a lot of damage on not a lot of targets, and it's this hyper efficiency where he's averaging like, I think, 11.5 yards per target, 8.5 or 18.5 yards per catch. Dude is just a playmaker. So, there have been times where it looked like Jerry Jeudy was going to be a bust, and Jameis Winston has just been like the high tide that's lifted all boats in the Browns passing game. I don't know what that's going to look like next year, because I kind of don't expect Jameis Winston to be the Browns starting quarterback next year. Like they are.
Just let me interrupt real quick. If you don't think it's Winston, do you think it's Watson then to start off the season?
He has the biggest cap number in the NFL. I don't know how they get away from him, Eric. Okay. That's really unfortunate, but unless they want to just let him ride the bench with that giant cap number, and I don't know how they do that and pay another starting caliber quarterback.
So the thing I always look at is which one of these guys has the pathway to be a number one wide receiver? Because if you're just going to be a number two, that's fine. But I like shooting for the moon for my dynasty wide receivers. And when you look at Jeudy here versus Jameson Williams is never going to be the number one. He's just, as long as Amon-Ra St. Brown and he are on the same team, he's just never going to be the number one. Jeudy, I don't know. And I guess if you are not a believer in Deshaun Watson, then yeah, take the piece of one of the best offenses in the NFL and Jameson Williams. But what is he? The number 3 option? Maybe sometimes the number 4. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too bearish on Jameson Williams right now. I don't doubt the talent. The talent is better with Jameson Williams. I just think, especially what we saw with Jerry Jeudy here, he has the potential to be the number one on that offense, even with Cedric Tillman, even with Elijah Moore. That's the way I look at it for Dynasty. So when it comes down to it, this is razor thin. You lean towards the talent with Jameson Williams, though.
Yeah, but I totally understand your perspective on that, wanting the guy who gets high target counts and has the potential to be a 100-catch guy. Like
Right.
if things work out for Jerry Jeudy and he's in the right offense and has the right quarterback, he could absolutely be a 100-catch guy, and he's showing us that now.
Let's see. What else do we have here in the chat? Okay. Dom Gazzetti likes to brag that he's in a 20-team league. Congratulations, Dom. Just kidding. That's awesome. I've never played in a 20-team league. I don't know how I would do in that. I don't know if I'd like it, but he's in it. He's got a challenge at flex this week. He's got Parker Washington. Don't call me Christopher. Gus Edwards for the Chargers, or the aforementioned Cedric Tillman, who we were just talking about. I don't really have a strong lean in any of these guys. I think if I had to pick one, it's probably Parker Washington. I like the two receivers over Gus Edwards this week. Pat, do you have a strong lean with any of these three guys this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'd want Tillman to get in on the Browns passing game if he plays, but I think he was still not practicing as of today, so probably not going to be playing. I agree with you with Parker Washington over Gus Bus. There's only one path to value for Gus Edwards since he doesn't catch passes, and that path pretty much runs into a brick wall this week with the Kansas City run defense, who just doesn't give up anything. I mean, I don't see Gus Edwards getting to 50 rushing yards, and it probably needs to fall into the end zone to not have a disappointing game for you.
Let's see. Johnny Talbot on YouTube right now has a defense question. He is dealing with either the Chargers defense this week, who is going up against the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Should he play them, or should he play the Cincinnati Bengals, which are on the road against the Dallas Cowboys? This is very, very close as well. My initial response is say, well, you're obviously playing the Bengals at the Cowboys, but we do know that Logan Wilson is out for the season, that a guy that had maybe the best PFF grades of his career, and obviously was a huge cog on that Bengals defense. And quite frankly, Pat, if you look at Cincinnati's defense, they've been hemorrhaging points to opposing teams. Part of the reason that we love Burrow and Brown and Higgins and Chase and Gesicki and all these guys has been the lack of performance from the Bengals defense. They get the Cowboys with Cooper Rush this week. Would you play them over the Chargers?
I've actually got the Chargers ranked higher, Eric. They're about 3 spots higher, but I haven't. Yeah, the thing is, Cooper Rush hasn't been a turnover machine lately. He's actually been somewhat competent, and in this case, since he's not, it would be different if Cooper Rush were Drew Lock or someone, even Will Levis, someone we could reliably count on to make a boneheaded interception. In this case, I think I'm going to go with just the better defense and go with the Chargers. I know Kansas City hasn't been the best matchup for an opposing defense, but they're not as, I think they're still not in the top 10 as far as points given up to opposing defenses. So the Chiefs aren't quite as bad a matchup for a defense as you would think, or haven't been so far. So I'm leaning Chargers. It's really close though.
It is close, and listen, we're going to help you out the best we can, Johnny, on this, because it is very close. Normally we don't get into the Thursday night game, but since the Thursday night game is so important for fantasy purposes, we'll get to some start sits here. Nick the Kick 17 on YouTube, perhaps a fan of Tom Hanks' bachelor party. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Jordan Love or Sam Darnold this week. Sam Darnold, honestly, Pat, when I look at Darnold's performances, I'm like, God, he's kind of tapered off. But then fantasy wise, I look at his numbers. Maybe he's tapered off from a real life standpoint. For fantasy, he's still doing numbers here this week. This is a close call for me. I'm going to lean towards Darnold over Love, but perhaps that's because of my Packers fandom stating that Love will not have to throw a bunch in the second half to catch up, that this will be a competitive game from kickoff until the final seconds tick off the clock. So I lean towards Darnold in a matchup I like a little bit better for the passing offense for Darnold. I think Green Bay's secret to success tonight is running the ball with Josh Jacobs against that defensive line that's missing like all 4 starters, basically. So I lean towards Darnold over Love here. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you, Eric. I think the passing game is sort of more essential to what the Vikings want to do. So Love has thrown 28 or fewer passes in 4 of his last 5 games. And the one exception was that last game against the Lions where they fell into the big hole and he had to throw it 39 times as they tried to dig out. So, we know Matt LaFleur wants to run the ball if he can. And I also think it's kind of a better matchup. Like the Lions, I think still have the lowest opponent passer rating in the league. And I know they're banged up, but it's still not an easy defense to throw on successfully. So I'm also leaning Darnold here.
So we both like Darnold there. So hopefully that helps you out, Nick. Trevor Holt, longtime Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship player, a guy I never like to see in my leagues, but I always seem to see him in my leagues, and I've competed against him a bunch. He wants to know, how are we feeling about Christian Watson tonight? Pat, we know Romeo Doubs is not playing in this game. Regardless of that, I know they still have Wicks. Jaden Reed is still the Packers receiver I feel most confident in starting every single week. I just look at Watson like I do every single week. If you're a significant underdog, you need to shoot for upside, then start Watson. If you feel like you're very close or you're a significant favorite, don't play Watson because he is reliant upon, number one, Jordan Love throwing a big deep ball. Number two, no pass interference being called on that deep ball. And number three, Watson still catching that deep ball for the big play. There's a lot of variables here. He just does not run the full. I don't want to say he runs the full route tree. I just don't think Jordan Love targets him as much unless it's a big play. So if it's a big play, hey, sure, he's probably gonna make it. He just doesn't see enough for me to trust him from a week-to-week basis. So that's my philosophy on Watson tonight against the Lions is the same it's always been. He's a big play guy. Start him if you need something electric, but if you don't, bench him.
Yeah, there's not much I can add to your framing, which I think was pretty spot on, Eric. I don't think Watson's had more than 7 targets in a game this season. And, as careful observers of the Packers, you and I both know that Dobbs being out doesn't mean a target windfall for Chris. The way this offense rolls, it means there's going to be more like Malik Heath and Bo Melton involved and maybe a little spillover to Tucker Kraft. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and really, like with this Detroit defense, they are pretty tough on outside receivers. It's the slot guys they really give it up to. And we saw that on Thanksgiving Day with Keenan Allen and his second half explosion. So I'm pretty optimistic about Jaden Reed tonight. And I think I've got Christian Watson ranked like wide receiver 36 this week.
That's about right.
Yeah. And he's going to finish nowhere near wide receiver 36. He's either going to be wide receiver 8 or wide receiver 77.
Right. Is that because you make the rankings? You make your own rankings for Fantasy Pros every week. Is that how you do it? Where you're kind of hedging, like where, okay, this guy is boom or bust, so I have to put him in the middle?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like kind of, I look at it as basically what I start this guy over him, and just kind of slot guys game by game, one at a time, and just sort of, handcraft it on Monday nights, usually late.
No. Paul Teixeira has a comment on Jordan Mason. We're going to get to that 49ers running back situation, I promise, later on in the show. Corey Walters on YouTube, he has to make a choice this week for his defenses, Arizona or Buffalo. Buffalo is at home against the Rams right now, Pat, and then the Cardinals go they stay at home. Excuse me. The Bills are on the road against the Rams. The Cardinals are at home against the Seahawks this week. We're splitting hairs here. I like the Bills this week. I have them going in several leagues, but I think you can make the case for the Cardinals against the Seahawks. It's so difficult to trust or look at with any kind of seriousness the Seahawks injury reports because it seems like Metcalf and Lockett and Walker and all these guys get limited or DNP. And then by Friday, they're practicing and they're all good to go. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in that. I lean towards Buffalo here, but I totally get it if you want to say Arizona at home against the Seahawks. What say you?
I'm not going to be much help. I have Buffalo ranked 8th and Arizona ranked 9th. I'm intrigued by Arizona. That defense has really overachieved. And I don't know about you, but I don't think all that much of Seattle's offensive line. So it's possible that Arizona could pick up a few sacks this week. But I do think the Buffalo defense is a little better overall, and we know Matthew Stafford isn't great at sack avoidance and will occasionally throw you the football.
Let's do a Young Shizzy's question here on YouTube. Another defense question. What about this, Pat? Seattle or Detroit, which is tonight? So Detroit obviously at home against the Packers. Seattle is going to be on the road against Arizona. I don't have a strong feeling in this. I feel like the way that Jordan Love and that Packers offense has been playing home or away, I feel like the Cardinals are more susceptible to turnovers. So I would lean towards the Seahawks defense over the Lions tonight, especially how beat up the Lions defense is.
Yeah, I maybe haven't accounted for the injuries as much as I should have. I've got Detroit in the top 10 though. I think I've got them 7th, and I've got Seattle further down at like 15th or whatever. Mainly just Jordan Love will occasionally do the the Brett Favre YOLO ball.
Yep.
Interception. So I guess that's what you're hoping for, and you're definitely, if you're playing the Detroit defense, you're hoping Detroit gets up and it's not a Green Bay lead where they can just run, and Jordan Love throws 23 passes.
I was at the last 2 games in person at Lambeau against the Niners and Dolphins, and as good as Jordan Love's stats has been for quite frankly since the bye, there were several passes, Pat, where I'm like, oh my God, what is he doing? Where it should have been a turnover and it wasn't. For whatever reason, the defender drops it. The receiver made a defensive play on it. I don't know. But Love is still putting it in harm's way. And oh, by the way, keep in mind, the last time the Packers and Lions played, Brian Branch got tossed out of that game early because of an illegal hit that he had made. They're going to have Brian Branch. They're going to have Kirby Joseph, 2 playmaking safeties in this game. Something to think about, too, especially if the Lions have a lead and they hold a lead late. Could be curtains for the Packers if Jordan Love is forced to make plays late in this game.
Yes, sir. And it looks like we have a correction. It was he meant Vikings. Or Seahawks.
Right.
Well, then I'm going Vikings. I mean,
yes.
Against Kirk Cousins. I mean, Kirk Cousins, who can't get out of his own way the last couple of weeks. So yeah, I'm going Vikings.
Even in a revenge game, Pat, I am with you. This is like, are you breaking the countdown now to Michael Penix in Atlanta?
I'm kind of surprised it didn't happen this week, quite honestly, Eric, because they're still very much in the hunt for the division title. And I just feel like someone made an interesting point on Twitter about how the Washington rookie wide receivers have underachieved collectively. Like Roma Dunze has been okay, but like not the star we thought he was going to be yet. Jalen Polk has been bitterly disappointing. Jalen McMillan really hasn't done anything. Makes you wonder if like Michael Penix wasn't the sort of straw that stirred the drink for the Washington Huskies last year, because those guys individually have not really done much as rookies.
I want to get to this question from Corey Walters. Is Patrick Taylor the backup to Isaac Guerendo for rest of the season? Now, this is interesting because we found out this week that not only is Guerendo the starter, not only is Patrick Taylor going to factor in, but the Niners have claimed Israel Abanikanda off of waivers from the Jets, one of my favorites for a late round rookie dynasty pick a couple of years ago. And now they have Abanikanda, they have Taylor and Guerendo. My thoughts on this, if you want to own the guy behind the guy, Pat, I like Patrick Taylor over Abanikanda, a guy who's not only been in this offense this year, but the previous year, who is not going to screw up. And sometimes I think the Niners value that more in their offense than playmaking ability. If I was looking to roster the Niners backup, I would much rather roster Patrick Taylor than Israel Abanikanda right now.
I'm with you, Eric. Just he knows the system. He's been in the organization for a while. Izzy Abanikanda has had a couple of days to learn the playbook and is a guy who never was able to really get a foothold with the Jets. So I'm sure the 49ers probably want to evaluate him for a little bit, a week or so. But honestly, I think the backup running back this week for the 49ers might be Deebo Samuel.
That's another point that not enough people are talking about. And I've been saying for the last few weeks, I'm like, you can't start Samuel. He's just not making plays. He's not getting involved enough in the offense. And this might be the proverbial kick to the rear for Kyle Shanahan saying, okay, we don't really, our running back room is depleted. Maybe we need to go back to utilizing Deebo Samuel as a running back more so. Now, I don't know if that makes him more startable, especially in full PPR leagues like the FFPC. But to me, Samuel is more appealing in week 14 than he has been in quite some time.
Yeah, you would have to think they get him involved as a runner, and he's had one carry over their last 3 games. Like I would imagine that's going to change.
So we have this question right now from Stephen Grease on YouTube. He has to pick for his 2 flex spots. His options are Josh Jacobs, George Pickens, Najee Harris, and Ladd McConkey. That is a good team, Stephen, if you are debating those guys right now. So I can't bench. I'll just speak for my own personal philosophy here. I can't bench Jacobs right now. Pickens looks like a man on a mission these last few weeks. So he's looking like I have to play him as well. So then it comes down to either Najee Harris or Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey looks great, but he's also dealing with an injury. And Jacobs plays tonight, obviously. So you'd have to make a decision on that. I would rank them probably Jacobs, Pickens, McConkey, Harris in full PPR. So in that sense, I am starting Jacobs and Pickens, and I'm not waiting around to find out what happens with McConkey.
Same. And I think it's actually 2 injuries for Ladd. It's shoulder and knee. So like his status is very much up in the air for Sunday night.
Brock Purdy against the Bears at home or Geno Smith on the road in Arizona. That's the question facing our mutual buddy Dom Gazzetti right now. I lean towards Purdy in this matchup. Pat, how do you feel about it?
I do too. Pretty close call. I've got Purdy ranked QB 13 this week and Geno QB 15.
Why we have 6 teams on bye this week. This is Bipocalypse 2 for the 2024 season, and Stephen Grease is feeling it on YouTube. He is missing Lamar Jackson as his quarterback. There are plenty of waiver wire options out there, but what is the best waiver wire option? Is it Caleb Williams against the Niners? Is it Russell Wilson, who is at home against the Browns? Geno Smith, we already mentioned, he's on the road against Arizona. You have Cooper Rush in his decision-making here at home against the Bengals, and then Matthew Stafford at home against the Bills. For me, I would lean towards Russell Wilson here, but I made a pretty compelling case that I think Caleb Williams has another great week against San Francisco this week, especially if Bosa is out again. Who's the best quarterback option for you?
I think it's Russ. And like the only concern with him really is passing volume, because we know the Steelers like to run the ball a lot. It's kind of the same situation Jordan Love is looking at, where they are content to run the ball if they have the chance. But you can throw on the Browns. Like they have been really vulnerable through the air this year, much more than I think anyone expected. And Russ has kind of been like, I'm really surprised at how well he has played, Eric. I don't know about you, but I am
too.
I was starting to wonder if he was kind of cooked. And he has shown us that there's something left in the tank for sure.
I want to and I said this on my local show last week. I thought Wilson he was like my sleeper of the week. I have to do a sleeper of the week. He was my sleeper of the week last week because I know the Bengals can't stop anybody, and it turned into a shootout with Pittsburgh and Cincinnati last week, which was great. And normally I would say, well, that's not going to happen against Cleveland. They're one of the best defenses in the AFC. Well, it was a shootout for the Broncos and the Browns on Monday night. So who the heck knows what's going to happen with those two teams. I do like Russell Wilson. However, Caleb Williams is probably my pick here. I like the way the Bears offense has been trending since they let Shane Waldron go. Now they get rid of Matt Eberflus. Thomas Brown, 22 pounds lighter. Thomas Brown is taking over the team, and he's got the offense in good hands. I just feel like Caleb Williams is the type of guy that with a long week to prepare for the Niners, obviously not enough time or not as much time to prepare for the Bears. I think this is a good Caleb Williams week as well. So I like both Williams and Wilson this week too.
Would you change your mind on that? If so I know DJ Moore didn't practice today.
This is the other thing, and we should talk about this because not only did Moore not practice for the second day in a row, DeAndre Swift missed practice for the second day in a row as well. So yes, that does. Here's the thing. I don't have to make a call on this tonight because neither one of these guys play on Thursday night. However, I will say that if I find out DJ Moore does not practice again tomorrow, yeah, it's wheels up for Russell Wilson here. I can't bet on Caleb Williams if he's missing his top target. And I think he will be missing his top target unless Moore finds a way to practice tomorrow.
Yeah, DJ Moore and DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson also dealing with a concussion. So maybe they start Travis Homer, and maybe like even if they don't have DJ Moore, that might put them in a situation where Caleb Williams has to throw it 40 times again.
Yeah.
And, all of a sudden you're looking at really enhanced target outlooks for Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet.
I think that Cole Kmet's interesting too. We're going to talk about him later on in the program for sure. The Bears right now against the Niners, that is a 425 start. Niners are actually 3.5-point favorites, so it's a positive game script for Caleb Williams right now as well. Total's only 44. Don't know how I feel about that as well. A young Shizzy, Laporta or Jonnu Smith. Slam dunk, Jonnu Smith. I don't know what's happened to Laporta, Pat, and I don't know what's happened to Jonnu Smith, but this is easily Jonnu Smith. I just saw and I know this is an FFPC show, but Jonnu Smith is like owned, not started, owned in fewer than 30% of Yahoo leagues. Yahoo players, what are you doing? Get him on your roster and start him. Jonnu Smith has been insanely good. And I can't remember who brought this up to me. Somebody, I think on this show a few weeks back, said that their philosophy on the Dolphins offense right now is Mike McDaniel does not want to get Tua Tagovailoa annihilated in the pocket, which is why you're seeing less from Tyreek Hill, less from Jalen Waddle, much more from Jonnu Smith, and much more from Devon Achane in the passing game. I think they have, it might have been Permar99, who hangs out in our chat quite a bit. He pointed this out, like, this is the whole idea is to keep the Dolphins offense moving. How do you keep it moving? Keeping Tua Tagovailoa upright and getting the ball to Smith and Achane.
Yeah, Jonnu does seem like he's a big part of the Tua preservation plan. And
Right.
man, I know Jonnu Smith is pretty much the guy single-handedly keeping me alive in the Scott Fishbowl playoffs.
Oh,
Eric.
you're crushing it. You are crushing it in there right now. I meant to bring that up at the top. Where are you at? I got eliminated this past week, so I've just I flushed it out of my system, but you are right up at the top, my friend.
So I had a good week. I think I was like top 40 or something like that. But it's going to be a challenge because the bipocalypse is hitting me pretty hard. I mean, I picked up Travis Homer. I'm starting like Grant Calcaterra this week,
which might not be bad.
It might not be bad, but yeah, I might be rolling with like a 4 tight end attack. I'm going to be starting kick returners this week. Like I'm just throwing anything at the wall. I'm so wrecked by these buys.
I missed the playoff cut line by like 10 or 11 points or something like that. And I did look at my lineup tonight just to see what, and like, dude, I had like 9 guys on bye. I would have been just, if it wasn't last week, it was going to be this week. Let's bring this up tonight. Kendre Miller is practicing in full against the Giants this week. Kendre Miller, a guy that Dennis Allen hated for whatever reason, we don't know. But Darren Rizzi, the Riz Master, who is rizzing Kendre Miller up apparently this week, said he doesn't have a doghouse. He doesn't even own a dog. So Kendre Miller, slate is clean. It is blank slate. He is ready to go, make some plays. This is more of a dynasty thing than anything else. But Alvin Kamara is going to be a year older next year. Jamal Williams, same thing. Kendre Miller, I think, is a very interesting dynasty stash. If you can hack it with an open dynasty spot this week, Kendre Miller is definitely a guy. We'll see what happens to him the rest of the season, but I'm more excited about him in 2025.
I'm sure they want to find out what they have in this guy because like he was a talented back in college. Like there was a lot to be excited about. And it's just, he has been derailed by one minor injury after another. They have no incentive to let hammer away with Alvin Kamara getting 25 touches a game down the stretch and a lost cause of a season. So it only makes sense. Plus with all the weaponry they are down as far as the pass catchers, kind of makes sense for them to run the offense through their backs. They don't have Taysom Hill anymore. Who knows if they're going to get Chris Olave back. I think it makes sense for them to give Kendre Miller some run. They know what they have in Jamal Williams, Eric. Like, what's the point in playing Jamal Williams more when you kind of need to evaluate Kendre Miller?
There's so many more subjects I want to get to. Maybe we can go rapid fire on this, Pat.
Sure.
Nick Chubb, 9 carries for 21 yards on Monday night against the Broncos, 24 yards and a touchdown on 2 receptions. this was Jerome Ford. Like, we saw a ton of Jerome Ford. This is not a question about like, oh, hey, should I be starting Jerome Ford here as a flex going forward in the FFPC and the Fantasy Pros Championship? Now I look at this backfield and I'm like, I don't think either one of these guys are playable based on what I saw on Monday night.
Yeah, it almost seemed like kind of a mini benching for Chubb, but I know Ford wound up playing more snaps, and I think they both had 9 carries. So yeah, I don't think you can trust either guy in your lineup at this point.
Yeah, keep rostering both of them, right? I'm not cutting either one, but definitely not starting.
Yeah. I mean, Chubb's longest run since he's come back has been 15 yards. There's just not a lot of juice. I mean, like, obviously a tough injury to come back from. Let's give him a full year before we judge.
Do you think, like, he was going 8th, 9th, 10th round in the FFPC main event this past year? You think that's about where he goes next year?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Something to be wary about. But again, 8th, 9th, 10th round next year, that means it's a full year recovered from that horrible ACL injury that he had week 2 of 2023. Let's talk about Jalen Coker here. He is practicing in full against the Eagles for week 14. Do you have any qualms about, well, I should ask you this. This muddies the waters a little bit for the Carolina receiving squad with Thielen and Leggett and now Coker here as well. Is there anybody you'd feel okay flexing out again in championship week, league championship week in the FFPC?
I'm inclined to like Adam Thielen the most of these guys just because I think he's been a pretty safe security blanket. I mean, he had over 100 catches last year, and I think going into like week 12 of 2023, Adam Thielen was top 10 in PPR fantasy scoring. My only concern is that, like, I want the slot guy from this offense, and my colleague at Fantasy Pros, Derek Brown, he thinks that Coker might be in the slot and they're going to kick Thielen outside. I tend to think it's going to still be Thielen in the slot. So that's kind of a wild card. Like, I want the slot guy. I don't want the outside guy.
Right. And I'm with you on that too. And the way Bryce Young has been playing, this makes everybody somewhat relevant in lineup setting decisions, right? But I'm with you. I think Thielen is the guy I want to start. I don't know if I can do it, but if I had to, it's Thielen. Kay on YouTube, going with the share one word name here, or one letter name in this case. Kay wants to know Justin Herbert or Brock Purdy this week. Herbert is at Kansas City. Brock Purdy is at home against the Bears. Every time I think I have the Chargers offense figured out, Jim Harbaugh or Herbert or whoever throws me a curveball here, I don't really have a strong feeling on this. I guess I'd lean Herbert, but man, I don't know, Pat.
Herbert, for whatever reason, seems to love playing against the Chiefs, Eric. In 8 career starts, he is averaging 273 passing yards against them, 2.1 touchdown passes. He's got 3 touchdown runs against them. His passer rating is like 101.5. For some reason, like, the Chiefs just bring out the bet. Remember that Thursday night game a couple of years ago where he like tore his rib cartilage and toughed it out in that one and like just completely balled out. I think they lost a close one to the Chiefs in that game, but like the matchup looks tough, but Herbert just gets fired up to play the Chiefs. I would play Herbert against, the machinery for the 49ers offense is just not running as smoothly as it was earlier in the year. Shoulder issue for Brock Purdy. I feel better about Herbert.
You know what? I was on the fence. Now I'm totally in favor of Herbert. Yeah, sometimes you can't explain it, but he plays well against the Chiefs. There's enough of a sample size for me to agree with that. I'm going with Herbert over Purdy. Couple more things here. We talked about the running back situation in San Francisco right now. Given the fact that there is so much turnover there, and given that Brandon Ayuk is out for the season, given that Deebo Samuel, as you alluded to, might be utilized more in the ground game, Jauan Jennings, how close to a must start is this guy, knowing that he is the de facto number 1 receiver for Brock Purdy and the Niners right now?
I want to say he is, Eric, but I'm like, I do have some lingering concerns about the fitness of Brock Purdy's shoulder, which I think, like, if he's not able to effectively throw downfield, I worry that Jennings is the guy who gets hurt by that. But I'm below consensus in my ranking of Jennings right now, but I've still got him like wide receiver 30. So like I'm positive,
So
generally positive. Yeah,
he's a flex for you.
Yeah, he should be starting for sure. I'm just
Okay.
not. I don't know if he's a smash play this week or not.
Okay. Fair enough. Jonathon Brooks, 6 carries for 18 yards, gets 3 targets, catches all of them for 23 yards against Tampa last week. In his first game, he was sparsely used at all. I only bring this up right now because he was more used in week 13, and Chuba Hubbard had a fumble in overtime. Pat, is Jonathon Brooks a guy that, I mean, obviously we're still rostering him, but does he sneak into the flex-worthy category with 6 teams on bye this week?
I don't think he does, just because he played 15 snaps. Chuba Hubbard outsnapped him like 55-15, and he just happened to get a touch on like 60% of his snaps. I kind of don't think he's quite in flex consideration.
Caleb Williams or Will Levis for young Sheezy this week. I am saying Caleb Williams, even though I am playing Will Levis in more leagues than I would care to admit. Will Levis at home against the Jaguars. Caleb Williams going to the Big Denim to take on the Niners in Santa Clara. I am saying I like Caleb Williams a little bit better. What say you, Pat?
Yeah, I don't hate that call, but for me, it's Levis. I think with the sailing downwind in that matchup against the Jaguars, and Levis has had at least 16 points in 4 straight games. So maybe I'd be on the Caleb side of the fence if there was just a little more clarity with some of their injuries.
Okay, and that's fair enough, and it's close for me. But listen, you're gonna give us the tough questions. You're gonna give us those hair-splitting lineup decisions, because every time you tune into this broadcast for the remainder of the season, these lineup decisions get more and more and more important. So we're gonna try to do it the best we can here. So that is Pat's thoughts and my thoughts on it. We have to move on. There's so much more to get to here tonight, but I want to make sure that we get to Pat Fitzmaurice's Week 14 FFPC Weekly Challenge lineup, which will include at least, I'll tease it that way, at least one player from tonight's game, which will kick off in less than a half hour here. He's Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros. You follow him on the X at Fitz_FF. I'm Eric Balkman from the Fantasy Football Players Championship. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Show rolls on the Better Sports Network right after this. Don't go anywhere.
What are we doing when we're drafting? Well, we're telling ourselves happy stories about players we want to pick, less happy stories about players we don't want to pick. And part of that is being ready to abandon our own carefully crafted narratives when it's time to abandon them, right? Like, bail, this was not working, So like we come in with super hard opinions, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. The better fantasy players are the people who acknowledge quickly that, hey, this isn't working out. Doesn't mean you have to abandon a player, but it means you have to abandon the approach, and maybe you have to go with a different player. I mean, if people were playing Stephon Diggs last year down the stretch, they were only playing him because his name is Stephon Diggs. You have to be ready to acknowledge, hey, this guy's not getting the job done. I did it. Bloom and I had a big discussion about this last December, and I'm saying you can't play him right now, right? And I know that's a hard decision to make, because why? FOMO. We're going to miss out on that big game. The minute I sit this guy down, he's going to have the big game. Well, maybe. But also, while he is not having great games, there are other guys on your roster having great games. And I think that's to me, the hardest thing about fantasy is like, when do I divorce myself from my narrative? When do I tell when do I acknowledge my happy story is not coming true? I need to figure something else out. And the people who are good at that are the people.
You talk about utilizing something called perpetual reloading to ensure something called a permanent championship window with FFPC Dynasty Leagues. How do we make sure that perpetual reloading is what we're doing in our rookie drafts every year to make sure that we're always competing for titles year in and year out?
Yeah, so we always have this tension between playing a little bit for the future and playing for the present. You'll have drafters jump into the startup. They'll draft the veterans. They're trying to win in that first year. Sometimes they do. I don't want to in any way, shape, or form suggest that doesn't work, because you see some of those teams compete and win titles. And yet, when we're thinking about the best way to control your chances to win, you want to be in the playoffs year after year. You want your championship window to always be open. You don't want to get to a point where you build, and then have a couple of years where you're going for it and then you're rebuilding again. You want to be in it every year. You want to get as many buys as possible so you don't have to compete in that quarterfinal round. You build a more powerful team. You can't control the injury that you have to the key player that cost you a title, or the 50-point game that a non-elite player like an Amari Cooper scores and knocks you out. You can control having one of the best teams every single season. The way that you do that is you build depth in your player talent across all those positions. You build depth in your picks. In order to execute some of those types of things, you trade down, you trade peak players, you trade young players. You've got to trade things that people want. A lot of times I think when people are trying to reload or rebuild, they're trying to trade distressed assets at a level that the rest of the group isn't interested in, and then you feel like you can't move. If you're going to make trades, you got to trade things that people want. You can also
9 minutes until the top of the hour here. You are watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC, the Road of His High Stakes Lowdown. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, welcoming in my good buddy and co-host tonight, Pat Fitzmaurice from FantasyPros at Fitz_FF from FantasyPros.com. Pat, we're going to flip things around here a little bit. I want to get to your weekly challenge lineup first, but before we do that, I want to answer a couple more questions here from the YouTube chat. Joe King wants to know, should he start, I always say, the other AOC, Aiden O'Connell or Bryce Young this week? So Aiden O'Connell named the starter. I do believe he missed practice today, but I think it was a sickness thing. It wasn't a soft tissue or any kind of significant injury thing. So I feel good about him playing this Sunday at Tampa. He has to make the decision. Is it Aiden O'Connell or is it Bryce Young, who is going up to Philadelphia? I lean towards AOC here.
I lean towards AOC too. Just a much easier matchup for him. And I'm trying to leave my bias out of this because Aiden O'Connell went to the high school that my kids are currently attending. No, it's such such an easier matchup. Like the Eagles' pass defense has just been a holy terror lately,
Yeah.
Eric.
Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, two rookies that are making differences in that secondary.
The Eagles needed cornerbacks so badly, and both of those guys went like 10 picks later than every mock draft had them going. Like, Howie Roseman has got to be the luckiest guy in the world. And I know like everyone wants to paint him as a genius for doing that in the draft. I have no idea how those guys fell. A lot of people had the Packers mocked connected to Cooper DeJean.
God, that's all we heard.
Draft.
Cooper DeJean. Like, and I'm like, okay, the one thing I'm sure of is Cooper DeJean is not going to the Packers because everybody had him going there. I knew it wasn't going to happen. Right. And by the way, just saying this, Howie Roseman, yes, he has made his fair share of swings and hits. This is the same dude who traded for Jahan Dotson. So let's slow the victory lap on Roseman as being the greatest football genius of our time. He still misses people. He still does miss.
And drafted Jalen Reagor ahead of Justin
Jefferson. Ahead of Justin Jefferson. That's even more egregious. Yeah, you're totally right there. Let's do this. Jay Stacks on YouTube. 12-man PPR. So his running back room is not great. He has to start two of these guys. Kareem Hunt this week, Kamani Vidal, Tyjae Spears, or Cam Akers. He could also pick up Blake Corum, Patrick Taylor, or Travis Homer. He's considering considering that both Roschon Johnson and DeAndre Swift are not practicing. So yeah, this is a bad situation here. Is there anybody, Pat, that stands out among Vidal, Spears, Akers, Corum, Patrick Taylor, or Travis Homer?
I'm in favor of picking up Travis Homer because I think he's the best potential answer if Swift and Roschon are indeed both out. And it looks like there's a decent chance they might be. Otherwise, it's really close. I mean, like I could make a case for any of these guys. Maybe Spears. Like I feel like, or wait, was Spears? Yeah, Spears is on that
one of them. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I feel like he's the most talented guy of this group. And, it's just all of these guys could get 3 or 4 carries, or maybe someone breaks through and gets 8 or 9. Like if you could guarantee me Aaron Jones loses another fumble in the first quarter, maybe Cam Akers is the guy to get. But I mean, right now I would want to pick up Travis Homer, but if Swift winds up playing, then I would probably start Tyjae Spears from this group.
You know what's funny about this is like I see this and I'm like, Blake Corum should be owned, right? Patrick Taylor should be owned given the news about McCaffrey and Jordan Mason, who, by the way, shout out to, I can't remember who posted it. Some guy utilized his number 1 waiver claim on Jordan Mason this week. That's unfortunate, but it does happen in fantasy football. Those guys should be owned. But yeah, as far as a guy this week, Travis Homer has more upside than Corum or Patrick Taylor in week 14 for sure. So you got to kind of feel out your roster here. And maybe it's a matter of picking up these guys and then seeing what happens with Johnson and Swift in practice tomorrow, because that could change how you should be deploying these guys in your starting lineup. Mr. Magic on YouTube, Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, or Jacoby Myers if he plays full PPR. Which one are you starting of those? I like Jackson Smith and Jigba the best.
I'm leaning Jacoby here. He has just been like, this guy is quietly on a 100 catch pace. And we have about as skinny as a target tree as you can possibly get with the Raiders. They basically throw to two guys. It's Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. And I have like long been guilty of underranking Jacoby Myers, and I'm just like refusing to do it anymore. So yeah, he's tops for me out of that group, but they're all really close.
They are close, and I would say like I do like Myers and Smith and Jigba better than Metcalf this week. The whole Metcalf injury thing I think is a fugazi. I think Metcalf is going to play. I'm done with stressing about these late injury reports we see on Wednesday and Thursday from Seattle when these guys ultimately go anyway. So it's close between Myers and Smith and Jigba for me. Here's what we're going to do now, Pat. Normally we do our Thursday Night Football preview. We're going to smash that in before the start of the game tonight. I want to get to your weekly challenge week 14 lineup right now. For anybody who is interested in playing in the FFPC, you do not need to wait until we launch leagues in January to play in the FFPC. You can build your lineup right now in the FFPC Weekly Challenge Week 14. You can build however you want to do it. 10 players or 12 players. You can play with 12 if you want to play with kickers and defenses. You can play with 10 if you want to play without. 10, 30, and 100 team lineups are available, or competitions are available. Enter for as little as $35. Win up to $2,500. If you want to do that, go to myffpc.com or simply scan the QR code, which is right here. Right here. No, right here. God, I cannot get this right. Right in front of me, right under Pat's microphone. That's where you want to scan, and that will take you right to the. Thank you, Pat. Pat Fitzmaurice. He is the best in the business for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. Scan that QR code. Myffpc.com is where it's going to take you, and you can register and play in the Thursday night lineup, which will lock in about 17 minutes here, which is why we're going to fly through this. Pat, your lineup tonight you've already given to me, and I'm going to bring it up on my screen right now. It is a 10-player lineup, sans kickers and defenses. Tell us who you're playing at quarterback, and tell us why you are playing that guy this week at quarterback in the challenge.
Got to squeeze in Josh Allen, and there were no real compelling options at wide receiver or running back for the Bills. So made Josh Allen kind of an easy choice.
Josh Allen is your quarterback. Let's get to your backfield. And I do believe you have 4 running backs on this roster. And here's the other thing. And I know I brought this up before, but I'm going to bring it up again. A lot of people will shy away from running backs in season-long fantasy football because of the high injury rate. This is a 1-week thing. So go elite when you can. And Pat, you went elite with your running backs tonight.
I did. I mean, you got to play Saquon Barkley. I think his player prop for rushing yardage is 113.5 yards against the Carolina Panthers. Like, best running back in the game, meeting the worst run defense in the game. So Devon Achane is my other guy. Like, I also like his matchup a lot against the Jets, a guy who can do it either on the ground or as a pass catcher. And then I'm flexing Alvin Kamara, who we know is going to be prominently involved in a pretty good matchup against the Dexter Lawrence-less New York Giants defense. And Bijan Robinson, kind of a tougher matchup, but
he's on a tear.
He is on a tear. And even if he does get bottled up a little by the Vikings run defense, he's a guy who can do it as a pass catcher too.
Barkley, Achane, Kamara, Robinson are the running backs here. Dom Gazzetti wants to know what our favorite cheese is. Trust me, we're going to get to it. I have some thoughts on this. May surprise you too. But before we do that, let's get to your receivers here tonight. It looks like you have 3 of them on your roster for this lineup tonight, Pat. And one of them is playing in the Lions-Packers game this evening.
Yeah. So Jamar Chase, he's just on fire and, pretty compelling matchup too against the Dallas defense. Justin Jefferson has slowed down a little bit lately. I feel like he's due for an explosion here pretty soon. And Amon-Ra St. Brown against the Packers. Hard to argue with what Amon-Ra's been doing lately.
He's a good floor play, right? I don't know if he's well. I mean, no Jair Alexander tonight for the Packers, so maybe it's a huge game. But like worst case scenario, what's St. Brown getting? Worst case scenario, 6 for 50. Like that's worst. That's still double-digit points. So yes. I love the recall there. You also have another. I take this back.
Forgot one more. Yeah,
one more receiver that is going to be going for the Rams this week.
Puka Nacua, and man, I just like somehow while he was hurt early this season, Eric, I just forgot how good he had been last year, and I think I don't know. I sort of faded him too much in rest of season rankings and the early rankings right when he came back. He is so good. Like he is just like he's better than Cooper Kupp. I don't think it's even close anymore that like Puka is better than Cooper Kupp. I mean, he's just fantastic.
And I think like peak of their careers, we can have that debate. But right now, knowing what Kupp is fighting through to get out there each and every week and knowing that Nacua it's a young man's game. I say this every week. This is a young man's game. I totally am on board with Nacua. And then your tight end, who could be the 101 pick in FFPC drafts, tight end premium drafts next year. A guy who was the tight end 9, tight end 8 this year. You have him in your lineup this week. I love him. Who is it?
Brock Bowers. And when I saw him as a freshman at the University of Georgia, Eric, like I was so disappointed to learn that he was a freshman and that I wouldn't get to draft him in any sort of fantasy league for like 3 more years.
Right.
But man, that time is here, and I loaded up on some Brock Bowers this year, and man, it's just. He's so good. He's everything we had hoped Kyle Pitts was going to be and more.
I think it was Theo Greminger, a longtime FFPC player who still plays in the FFPC a lot, he told everybody during Dynasty season after Brock Bowers, even before Brock Bowers got picked by the Raiders, he said, draft Brock Bowers now because you will never get him this cheap in any FFPC league ever. Pat, I'll put this to you. I was talking with John Terry, a longtime FFPC player, won hundreds of thousands of dollars with the FFPC over the last 10, 15 years. Tight end premium format right now, if you're drafting for 2025, who's your 101? Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, or Brock Bowers?
I think it might be Bowers. I mean, and there's probably going to be some sort of quarterback upgrade for the Raiders too. So it is hard to argue with him. Like I think he's pretty foolproof. Like we are looking at a 1,000-yard, a perennial 1,000-yard tight end. Mm-hmm. And in tight end premium, I mean, how valuable is that?
Here's my hot take. I don't want him to get a good quarterback. I like having a substandard quarterback on that team that is only good enough to do 2 reads, right? Read 1, Brock Bowers. If he's not open, you hit Jacoby Myers. If he's not open, you run. So it's just Bowers and Myers, right? And that's it. Now maybe they draft somebody at wide out, or maybe they get Luther Burden or one of these other big time receivers at Tetraora, whatever his name is, from Arizona.
Yeah, I just go with Tet.
Pat, okay, yeah, he's going to be a force as well. So, but like Bowers right now, dude, like I'm telling you, there is not going to be one player that moves up in ADP as much as Bowers does in the FFPC next year. So if you want to get it in now. 11 minutes to go in the FFPC Weekly Challenge Thursday night, Week 14 challenge. You have for Pat Fitzmaurice tonight, Josh Allen at quarterback, Saquon Barkley, Devon Achane, Alvin Kamara, and Bijan Robinson at running back. The receivers are Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, and the tight end is Brock Bowers. Okay, here we go. Joe King, by the way, on YouTube. Jameis to Vegas, please. Oh. Yes, I'd be on board with that.
Oh, man.
Get Jameis Winston at quarterback. Get Deion Sanders at head coach, and let's go, because that is going to be a great fantasy team if all those things happen next year for sure.
Oh, good Lord. Brock Bowers might have 1,500 yards if Jameis winds up in Vegas.
In the first half of the season. It would be great. Okay, let's get into our Thursday Night Football preview here tonight. The Packers and Lions are getting ready to kick off in about 10 minutes. We've kind of touched on a lot of these guys tonight, Pat. I want to get into it a little bit more in depth as much as we can. Jordan Love tonight, I think the hashtag analysis for him tonight is, hey, the Lions are the better team. The Lions are going to control the game, and it's going to be on Jordan Love to make plays in the fourth quarter. And if it is on Jordan Love to make plays in the fourth quarter, that probably bodes well for his fantasy prospects tonight. I only own him in one league. I'm starting him in that league tonight, but I envision a 20-point game from Jordan Love tonight. How big is this game for Love, again, from a fantasy standpoint that you see?
Yeah, it is big. And I think really the key, Eric, is just the passing volume, because we have seen him be able to but we've seen volume from him with the 28 or fewer pass attempts in 4 of the last 5. And I mean, that's kind of the way Matt LaFleur wants to play, but it's not necessarily good for fantasy. But it all depends, how well can we run it on this good Lions run defense, and what kind of game script do we get? So it just really hard to tell with Love. Like I could see him having this lights out game where he's throwing it all over the place, or maybe, if the Packers go up early, maybe he does get to be a game manager.
I don't have the opportunity to watch every single minute of every single Lions game, but I do have a lot of people in the Northeast Wisconsin area telling me about how the Lions operate, and they happen to be Lions fans. And they said, look, the Lions love to pound Montgomery in the first quarter, control the game, and then work off of that. Utilize Gibbs, utilize St. Brown, utilize Laporta after that. And to me, I think that's what the Packers want to do tonight, right? They want to be the team that's going to be the bully. They want to establish Josh Jacobs in this game and make sure that they're controlling the clock, keeping the Lions offense off the field. To me, I know you never say a game is decided in the first quarter, but Pat, tonight, this might be a game where whoever runs the ball best in the first quarter is going to have a significant advantage for the remainder of the game.
Yeah, I like that call. I mean, I think that is going to be one of the keys.
Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks, 2 of the top 3 options for receivers for the Packers passing game tonight. No Romeo Doubs. He was not able to get out of concussion protocol in time for this evening's game. Everybody and their mother is still playing Jaden Reed. I get it. I support it. I'm playing him everywhere. Are either Watson or Wicks on your flex radar tonight, though, Pat?
Watson, yes. Although we have pointed out that, no more than 7 targets in any game this year, and the absence of Dobbs doesn't necessarily mean a target windfall. I don't know about you, Eric. I'm kind of down on Wicks. I mean, he has shown us a lot of Quentin Johnston in his game.
Oh God, don't listen. Just I get it. Just don't utilize the 2 names together, Pat. That's just.
I want to like the guy so much, but he is having issues with the simple act of catching a football. And that's concern. He's averaging 4.8 yards per target this year. Like, Wicks has been really disappointing, and I know he hasn't had a ton of opportunities as far as targets, but he's been kind of bad.
He is a guy that, as of, I want to say 3 weeks ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, leading the league in drops as far as, those who qualify for it. A guy that wasn't getting separation, a guy that was not making plays. And if you look back at this Packers-Lions game at Lambeau Field a few weeks back, dropped a wide open touchdown in the end zone, a play that he should have made, and he didn't. I am of the opinion that until Wicks shows me something, he's going to be on my bench. If I happen to miss him tonight, where he goes 6 for 120 and 2 touchdowns, so be it. I've made my peace with it. Maybe I'll look at starting him the following week, but not tonight. Watson is a little bit more interesting. Again, we talked about this at the top of the show, right? If you need a big play or a big performance, Watson does have it in him tonight. I don't know if it's going to happen, but he's the upside guy here for Green Bay.
For
sure. Tucker Kraft, a player that, we talk about these tight ends every year in fantasy football. There's always one guy that comes outside of the top 12 every year of how we draft them. There's always one guy who's not drafted in the top 12 that becomes a top 5 guy. And I said, it's Tucker Kraft this year. And then I changed it. Maybe it's Cade Otton this year. Now I might be back to Tucker Kraft after what I saw him do against Miami this past week. Tight end premium league, you have to start him somehow, whether it's in your tight end spot or your flex spot. But Tucker Kraft is a guy that I could easily see, even against the Lions tonight. 5 or 6 catches, 70, 80 yards. You're thrilled with that, and I think it's going to happen.
And he is one of those guys who the other receivers don't seem to get a bump when one receiver is missing for the Packers, but it's always Tucker Kraft who seems to get the bump in targets. The only issue, Eric, the Lions have allowed the fewest receptions and fewest receiving yards to tight ends, and there's only been one touchdown catch by a tight end against the Lions this year. So it is a tough matchup.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point. And it gives me pause. I guess like if you're not playing in a tight end premium reception league, then okay, then maybe you can make the case for sitting him. But if you are tight end premium like the FFPC, I think you got to find a way to get him in there. But you're right. This is not the easiest of matchups. Even as beat up as the Lions defense is, you could be right. This could be a bad Kraft night tonight. Let's flip it over to the Lions offense. Jared Goff, is he a start or sit at home against the Packers here tonight? Goff is one of the most efficient quarterbacks we've seen. He found a way to make Sam Laporta super useful last week, getting into the end zone twice. He's got that great running game behind him. And obviously he can deploy passes to both Montgomery and Gibbs, and they're going to make things happen. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, he didn't have this past week. This is a leading question. Obviously, I like Jared Goff as a back-end quarterback start tonight.
Yeah, I've got him quarterback 9 this week, and we've seen a volume uptick. Like in his first 8 games, he threw fewer than 30 passes in 7 of them, and they were just running teams to death. Ben Johnson wanted to grind it out. In the last 4 games, he's thrown 30 or more passes 3 times, and he's got multiple touchdown passes or multiple games with multiple touchdowns, 8 this year. So he's having a good year. Been really efficient. I do like him. No Jair Alexander. So seems like a good spot for him.
It does seem like a good spot for him. And normally I don't like starting players that are of the Christian Watson ilk, the Devery Henderson ilk, these guys that need to make this 40 or 50 yard catch to Marquez Valdes-Scantling that need to make this 40 or 50 yard catch to make themselves fantasy worthy. And I think Jameson Williams, for the large portion of his career, has been that type of player, right? He's been the type of player where if he doesn't catch that big bomb from Goff, or if he doesn't catch that 20-yard pass that he turns into a 40 or 45-yard pass, maybe for a touchdown after the catch, you want him on your bench. Tonight, against a secondary that, granted, is still going to have Xavier McKinney, Javon Bullard, Evan Williams at safety, but Carrington Valentine, who's been making a few plays at corner, Eric Stokes, who has been making 0 plays at corner, no Jair Alexander tonight. Are you trying to wedge Jameson Williams into your starting lineups this week, Pat? Because not only that big play potential, but maybe a higher floor than we normally see from this player.
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm kind of wary of that archetype of the low targets, big play receiver who just, with all the ups and downs. But I've been consistently ranking Jameson Williams above consensus this year just because I think this guy's different. Like, he just crackles with electricity when this dude has the ball in his hands. And plus they'll work him in the running game. He's got, he gets like 1 reverse a game. I think he's got 8 rushing attempts or 9 rushing attempts this year for like 56, 60 yards, something like that. He's just really good. And we're seeing it, like, it was really a slow rollout for him coming off that injury in college. But like, we have seen now why the Lions spent the draft capital on him that they did.
Crackles with electricity. Have you been saying this about Jameson Williams before? Or is this an HSFF show exclusive on BSN tonight?
Yeah, no, I've maybe used that line before.
Okay.
But,
all right.
Yeah, he's special though, man.
I think, again, not to bring up Theo Greminger again, but I think he said on one of his podcasts, he was a big fan of Jameson Williams coming into this year, to the point where he didn't want to refer to Jameson Williams by name, where he wanted to have a code word so everybody knew who he was talking about. And it's like, well, what do I call Jameson Williams? Well, they started calling him Whiskey Bill, obviously because of Jameson and then Williams being Bill. So they started calling him Whiskey Bill. Oh, I love Whiskey Bill in the 7th round or the 8th round or whatever. But now, thanks to Pat Fitzmaurice, the crackling electricity, the electric crackle for Jameson Williams tonight, we could see that happen. And honestly, your Twitter mentions are going to blow up if Jameson Williams catches a 70-yard touchdown or something like that tonight. It could happen.
I mean, for our sake, let's hope that doesn't happen. But
right,
yeah,
exactly. Yes. Final question. So on my local fantasy football show here that I do weekly, my bust of the week for Thanksgiving week was Sam Laporta. And I felt pretty strongly about it. He just wasn't getting used. This is a player that has taken a back seat to St. Brown in the running game. And lo and behold, I loved seeing it. 3 catches, 6 yards. Hey, I nailed that. Except for he caught 2 touchdowns. It was 3 catches for 6 yards and 2 touchdowns this past week. What do you do with Sam Laporta in a tight end premium format like the Fantasy Pros Championship, like the FFPC main event? Are we starting or sitting him tonight? Because I honestly could go either way on this guy, even after what I saw last week.
Same. It's boom or bust. You just got to decide what your risk tolerance is. And that's the weird thing, Eric, that he is actually averaging like 1.5 more yards per target this year than he did last year in that spectacular rookie year. He's up to 8.9 yards per target, just outstanding for a tight end. Last year he was at 7.4. The difference was last year he was averaging 7.1 targets a game. This year he's down to 4. And I really think that the Jameson Williams breakout has really hurt Sam Laporta more than anyone else.
The last thing I want to get to here tonight, Parkway 72 wants to know, he's on Twitch hanging out, and thanks for watching us on Twitch tonight. We appreciate it. He's got to make a choice between Drake London or Jaden Reed at flex. Now, I do like London quite a bit this week, and I'm playing him obviously in all my leagues. However, Jaden Reed blew up in the last game against Detroit, and Detroit has been hemorrhaging yardage and fantasy points at the slot position. Amik Robertson is a guy that gave up a ton against the Bears this past week, and he'll be tasked against Jaden Reed tonight. Listen, I'm still playing London, but man, it's close because I love Reed this week.
You said it well. It's the Lion or the Vikings give it up to wide receivers too. And like it's a great matchup for London. But yes, like you want to attack the Lions in the slot. And I think it could be a big night for Jaden Reed. But I do have London ranked a little higher.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like if you have to make the choice, then it's London. But both these guys are excellent starts. We have a few minutes left in this segment. I want to get back to, and I can't remember who said it. I think it was Dom Gazzetti wants to know, what is our favorite cheese? Now, Pat, refresh my memory. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What part of Wisconsin?
I grew up in Whitefish Bay, which is just north of Milwaukee.
Right.
It is the hometown of Cubs manager Craig Counsell. And if you recall the TV show Third Rock from the Sun, do you remember the tall gal, Kristen Johnson?
Johnson. I'm
a Whitefish Bay native.
Listen, I can't remember. It might be my blue sky, but I think it is my blue sky background. Third Rock from the Sun is like my profile, or not my profile picture, but my background picture.
Yeah.
As far as like my all-time favorite sitcoms, that is one of them. Seinfeld, Third Rock from the Sun, News Radio. I'm a huge News Radio fan.
Oh, the cast.
Oh God, it was unbelievable. Joe Rogan when he was like normal. It was great. Andy Dick when he was normal. Phil Hartman when he was alive. It was it's a fantastic cast. And then then it blurs after that. I love Veep. I love Curb Your Enthusiasm. I love Silicon Valley. I love all those shows. But like to me, like dude, like when News Radio and Third Rock from the Sun was going hard, even now I'll watch those shows and they're not dated at all. I absolutely love it.
Agreed.
And Whitefish Bay, by the way, the hometown of starting power forward on, I believe, the Badgers 2000 Elite 8 team, or maybe it was the Final Four. I think it was the Final Four team. You had Mark Vershaw, you had Mike Kelly, and the starting power forward, Andy Kowski, who went to Whitefish Bay Dominican, which was not, Whitefish Bay, but it was Whitefish Bay Dominican. So Andy Kowski, also from that hometown, or from his hometown, is Whitefish Bay as well. Okay, let's do this. Favorite cheeses. We have to, because we're both cheeseheads, we have to bring up our favorite cheeses. I'll let you go ahead and talk about yours. Don't narrow it down to one, because as any cheesehead knows, you can't narrow it down to one. There's so many good ones. Go ahead, Pat, with yours.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide. Man, I love a good stinky cheese. I love a good nutty cheese. I'm kind of torn between like Gorgonzola and Gruyere.
Oh,
I think I'm gonna.
Gruyere is so good. Good.
I think I got to go with Gruyere.
Yeah, I can't fault you for that. I can't remember. I think it was Joe King said Balky seems like a smoke Gouda guy. Man, I'm telling you, and as stereotypical as this is, if you get like a turkey sandwich on some real thick, dense bread with some sliced apple. And then you throw on like a smoked Gouda, like a thick smoked Gouda. There's nothing better.
Oh, the apple and the Gouda. I love that idea. Yeah. Oh man, I got to give that a shot.
Apple and Gouda is fantastic. I love, and I've had the Vermont sharp cheddar, and it's good, but the Wisconsin sharp cheddar. My kid, who knows nothing about cheese, and he's tried a bunch of cheeses because he lives in Wisconsin, will always fall back on the Wisconsin sharp or extra sharp cheddar. That is so good. Put it on a burger, melt it on the grill. It's so good. Now, provolone is fine. Swiss is fine. Like, I'm not hating on the white cheeses or whatever, but you talk about Gruyere, smoked Gouda. Oh, the smoked part of it is so good. Yes. And then the extra sharp cheddar from Wisconsin. I don't think you need, I mean, that's everybody's diet here in Wisconsin. Like, you don't need anything besides that.
Oh, amen, brother. I mean, now I'm wishing the Mars Cheese Castle was open so I could take a little drive up north. It's about 40 minutes away.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I go by it all the time. When I'm driving down to 41 or driving down Highway 41 to go to a Bucks game or a Brewers game or whatever, I would say, like, God, we should probably stop in. And normally my family says no, so it is what it is. We have football underway here any minute. We're going to stop out and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to give all your start-sit questions that you possibly could think of. We're going to give you answers to all of them. He's Pat Fitzmaurice from the Fantasy Pros over at fantasypros.com at @Fitz_FF. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. Don't go anywhere. We roll on right after this.
The Bears have to be one of the most inept franchises of any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And they share the city with the White Sox, who are also inept. Like, that is how bad the Bears are. I just don't understand how you can go your entire existence and the quarterback that wins you a Super Bowl is Jim McMahon. You couldn't find anybody else.
They don't have a good history with quarterbacks, and they let him be the quarterback for a long time too.
Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes right there. Mm-hmm. And you drafted Mitch Trubisky. They were right there. I there's a lot of pain in being a Falcons fan. The Bears are one of the teams I could argue they might have it worse, and they have a Super Bowl. And when the best quarterback in the past 50 years is Jay Cutler, you have a problem.
That's so funny that you just said that. We were talking about Jay Cutler the other day, me and my friend, and I was like, yeah, he was on, because we were watching the Colorado Rockies game against the Giants, and it looked like he was behind the thing. I was, yeah, well, he played for Denver most of his career. We looked it up. Chicago let him be their starting quarterback way too long.
Here's the thing, too, is that Jay Cutler wasn't bad. Like, he was erratic. He wasn't terrible, though.
The poor man's Brett Favre.
I'm taking him over Justin Fields. I'm sorry.
I would.
But yeah. Jay Cutler led that team to an NFC title game.
Yeah.
That they lost to Green Bay. But he's gotten farther than anybody else. You want to know who the other starting quarterback was for the Bears in the other Super Bowl appearance they made? It was Rex Grossman. What are we doing out here? It was Rex Grossman, and Kyle Orton was the backup. How are you that bad? Bro, like, oh my God. Listen to the top 5. According to Football Reference, the top 5 greatest Bears quarterbacks of all time. Jay Cutler, number 1.
I can't believe it.
Sid Luckman, who last played in 1950, is number 2. Jim Harbaugh is number 3. Jim McMahon, the Super Bowl winner, is number 4, and he played there for 6 years. And Mitch Trubisky, is number 5 on the list as terms of passing yards go.
The High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network rolls on right now for the next 35 minutes as we will take you up until the top of the 9 o'clock hour, paying close attention to this Detroit-Green Bay game that has started. We are under 10 minutes to go in the first half. The Lions just had a 3rd and goal from the Green Bay 7, incomplete from Goff to Patrick. However, Keyshawn Nixon gets flagged for illegal contact. It is now first and goal from the 3 for the Lions. We'll update you on that game going forward. Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros joining me tonight, a noted Green Bay Packers cheesehead as well. So we were pulling hard for Green Bay tonight. Tough to see a penalty on the Bourbon Basher, but it is a long game, and we will keep you abreast on everything going on. And, by the way, we have a touchdown in the game now. It is a 3-yard rushing touchdown for one David Montgomery as the Lions take a 6-0 lead. Jake Bates will be on to kick the extra point momentarily. We'll update you on that. 9:41 to go in the first quarter. A question from Chill on YouTube. He has a flex question. Some of these guys have already started, so I apologize, Chill, that we can't get to this in time. Laporta, Jamison Williams, Jerry Jeudy, or Isaac Guerrero. He is starting Jonnu Smith right now at flex. Assuming this is FFPC tight end premium scoring, yeah, it's Jonnu Smith for me over all those guys, including the Lions who already started.
Agreed. And I guess my runner-up would probably be Guerrero. Would you play Guerrero or Jeudy, Eric, given the choice?
Full PPR, I think I'd play Guerrero over Jeudy. I just, this was a game on Monday night where he catches 9 passes for 235 yards against his former team in a game where Jameis Winston set the passing record for the Cleveland Browns with 497 passing yards. I can't imagine, and I'll tell you a quick story about that game in a second, but I can't imagine Jeudy coming close to not even duplicating, just getting half of what he did in any game going forward. I think it was an outlier, and I don't trust Jeudy going forward. So for me, it's Guerrero.
Yeah, Jeudy got the better of Joey Porter Jr. a couple of weeks ago when they played that game in the snow. There are only 6 targets for Jeudy, but he caught all of them for 85 yards. I have a feeling Joey Porter is going to be out for revenge in this one with the game in Pittsburgh. I have this feeling like it might be a tough night for Jerry Jeudy.
You have kids, right, Pat? How old are your kids?
18 and 17.
Oh my God, they're way older than mine. Okay. So my son is my oldest kid. He turned 11 in September. This is his first year playing fantasy football. He's playing it in a league with a bunch of his buddies from school or whatever. But let's face it, all the dads are running the teams, myself included. So this week, going into the Monday night game, my son was up by about 10 or 15 points and had Will Lutz and the Broncos defense going against Jerry Jeudy. So this is nip and tuck. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Feeling pretty good. I put him to bed. I say, yeah, I think you're going to get a win, but we'll see. Anything can happen. The normal disclaimer. Boom, Jerry Jeudy, 70-yard touchdown. I'm like, well, that's probably it, right? Well, Will Lutz kicks a couple of field goals. You got the pick 6 from the Broncos. But even then, under 2 minutes to go, I say, I'm watching to the game, and I say, God, the only way he's going to get a win, because he was down by 4 or 5 points at that point. I said the only way he's going to get a win is if there's a pick 6. And why would there be a pick 6? If the Broncos pick it off, they're just going to kneel it, right? They're not going to return it. Not Jalen McMillan? I can't remember what his name was. McMillan from the Broncos, the corner, picks it off, somehow avoids contact with Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore somehow does not get up to tackle him. And McMillan gets up, boom, pick 6 with 1:48 to go in the game. And I'm like, oh, he's got it now. No, not so fast, my friend. Jerry Jeudy catches a pass on that final drive. And then there's a pass interference penalty that puts him first and goal at the 2. I'm like, God, if Jeudy catches a touchdown, as crazy as this was, he's going to lose this game. And then Jameis Winston never fails. And I'm a big Florida State fan. I don't know if you know that, Pat. I'm a big Florida State fan. I've seen this happen in the pros. I saw it happen in college. Winston throws another pick. Boom, game over, and he survives another week. Just unbelievable. I mean, and he didn't stay up for it, which was the crime, right? Because, I want my kid to stay up, but I can't be putting him to bed at 10:30 on a school night, which sucked,
It was probably a fun thing to explain to him the next day.
Oh, my God. Because he'll get on it. He'll get up, he'll get dressed, and as he's having breakfast, we'll talk or whatever. Before he gets on his iPad to check his score, which is what he always does Tuesday morning, I'm like, don't go on there yet. Let me tell you what happened last night, because it was absolutely insane. It was an insane Monday night game. Could be in for an insane Thursday night game here too, as the Packers are going to get the ball first, down 7-0, 9:41 to go in the first quarter on Thursday Night Football. Pat Fitzmaurice gave us his FFPC Weekly Challenge lineup in the previous segment. Play the FFPC Weekly Challenge now, myffpc.com, 10, 30, and 100 team contest. Join for as little as $35, win up to $2,500. No draft, no salary cap. Pick the players you want. Just don't duplicate anybody. If you want St. Brown, you can't have Goff. If you want Jordan Love, you can't have Jaden Reed. No duplication, one player per team. myffpc.com, or scan the QR code conveniently located right underneath Pat Fitzmaurice's microphone here. That will take you right to the registration page, and you can compete for $2,500 in Week 14 with the FFPC. Let's get into some start or sits here, Pat. Travis Etienne or Isaiah Pacheco, something that people never thought that they'd be wondering about heading into Week 14, but this is the world we live in. This is Week 14 in the FFPC. Travis Etienne is on the road against the Tennessee Titans, a formidable rush defense. Isaiah Pacheco, fresh off IR as of last week. Pacheco is at home against the Chargers. If you could only play one, who's it going to be?
I feel a little bit better about Pacheco, just in the far better offense. I don't know if we get the full ramp up to where he's back, like operating as the true lead back with Hunt as a strict backup. Maybe it's still something close to 50-50, 60-40 in Pacheco's favor, but I do feel a little bit better about Pacheco. Just a much healthier offensive ecosystem for him than for Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, like, who would you want to start? Would you want to play the guy that is in this offense that's dying this year with Mac Jones, or would you want to play the guy that's, this is underrated. He's kind of fresh, right? He had all this time on IR. He's coming into Week 14 in a season where his teammates have been battered and his opponents have been battered over the last month and a half while he's been resting and rehabbing. I lean towards Pacheco here as well. Let's see, who is this? Is this Matrius Lloyd, Brock Purdy, or Sam Darnold this week? We talked about both these players. I think I feel pretty confident in saying I like Sam Darnold significantly more than Brock Purdy this week.
Same. I'm with you. And the Falcons are easier to throw on than they are to run on. So I think the matchup sets up pretty well for Sam Darnold.
His other question here, Pat, is at the running back position, which is what we're analyzing right now. He's got Rachaad White, who is at home against the Raiders this week. His other option is Jalen Warren, that is home against the Browns. I guess this kind of hinges on Bucky Irving's health, right? If Irving is ready to go, I would probably lean towards Warren here. But if Irving is out on Sunday, then yeah, I'm playing Rachaad White totally over Warren.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going White no matter what. Even with Irving playing really well, White is still getting like around 12 touches a game. I think that's kind of the expectation for both of these guys, roughly like 12 touches. I kind of dig what the Buccaneers have been doing and the way they've run the offense through their backs. I think Irving and White have combined for like 103 touches in their last 3 games. Like it's those two guys and Mike Evans, basically.
Right.
We haven't heard a peep from Cade Otton lately. It's been
probably because of the return of Mike Evans. Right?
Yeah. But like it's just Evans and those backs, man. So I think I'd go White.
Another one from here from Matrius Lloyd. I'm assuming Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Jauan Jennings, and Jacoby Myers. He's got to bench one of these guys. It's hard for me to bench either of the Rams guys, so this comes down to Jennings or Myers. I think I'm going to bench Jennings here over Myers, but it's close. And quite frankly, Myers, I might have mentioned this early in the show, Myers is battling something right now, I think. Trying to locate it right now to see if I can get his the latest on Jacoby Myers and his injury. He is dealing with an ankle injury right now. So as it stands right now, I'd bench Jauan Jennings. But obviously if Myers can't go, then you bench Myers.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would also bench Jennings. And man, how many catches is Brock Bowers going to have if Jacoby Myers doesn't play?
I can't even imagine. Like it will break math as we know it, Pat. Like it will be a bad situation for sure. Getting back to let's talk about another Jalen Warren here. Jalen Warren this week or Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards, a guy who will probably be the lead running back for the Chargers with no J.K. Dobbins this week. But we saw what that was worth this past week, and it wasn't a whole lot. Now he gets the Kansas City Chiefs rush defense on the road. I can't play Edwards over Warren here.
I'm with you, Eric. And yeah, I mean, it's just Edwards only has the one path to value, and it's on the ground. And the Chiefs have one of the best run defenses in the league, whereas Warren has run catch potential. I know he shares, like, obviously Najee Harris gets a lot of work, and Cordero Patterson mixes in too. But like the Buccaneers, the Steelers are an offense that kind of runs through their running backs.
Jordan Love throws off his back foot on 3rd and 6. Cannot find Dontavian Wicks deep. At least it was not a drop by Wicks. It was probably not a catchable ball. The Packers forced the punt. They pinned the Lions deep. The Lions will have the ball 1st and 10 from their own 9-yard line when they resume in Thursday Night Football. 6:38 to go in the first quarter. They have gone to commercial. We have not, as we are talking about starts and sits here. And with 6 teams on bye, Pat, this matters this week. Zach Charbonnet or Jerome Ford. A lot to unpack here. Charbonnet on the road against the Cardinals. Charbonnet, who was getting carries and touches inside the 10, inside the 5, which was normally dedicated to Kenneth Walker over the past ever in Seattle. But now Charbonnet is getting those touches. Jerome Ford, a guy who was always the backup to Nick Chubb, and yet what we saw on Monday night was that Ford was out there a lot more than Chubb, maybe because Winston was throwing so much and Ford is just a better threat out of the backfield to catching the ball. I don't know. But these guys, Charbonnet and Ford, yes, they are backups in name only, because I think these guys definitely played a much bigger role in both these teams' offensive game plans in Week 13 and probably will again in Week 14.
Don't have a strong feeling about it. Slight lean towards Ford just because he played more snaps than Nick Chubb, and it wasn't even all that close this past week. And I just don't feel great about the Seattle offensive line, which I think is one of the worst offensive lines in the league.
How do you feel about Nick Chubb in dynasty leagues right now?
Not great. I mean, he's heading into what would normally be the twilight years for any running back, his late 20s. I mean, I don't know if he hits 30 in 2025 or just 29, but coming off the injury, like I hope he is closer to the old Nick Chubb next year, but you just wonder how many years of like close to peak production he has, even if he does return to something close to what he used to be.
I am in dynasty what they call a bag holder. In other words, I will have these old guys on my team as long as I can, and once they're no longer usable, I'll just cut them. I don't try to sell them off for draft picks or younger players or what have you, because I think that by and large it has bit me in the rear more times than not in my dynasty fantasy career. However, if you were able to get a 2nd-round rookie pick in 2025 for Nick Chubb right now, would you take it?
I would take a second.
Second round?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to receivers here, Pat, and talk about Bills, the Bills receivers. This is interesting. I think I alluded to it in maybe it was a different show, but it seems like the Bills continue to go forward with the ground game as their focal point of attack, whether it's Josh Allen, whether it's James Cook, whether it's Ray Davis. That just seems like the way that they want to win football games right now, which is fine. However, that leaves us in a quandary of, number one, who the best receiver on the Bills is when Amari Cooper is playing hurt. And number two, how effective these Bills receivers are going to be. Cooper versus Shakir. I've been really surprised at how good Khalil Shakir has been since the Amari Cooper acquisition. And if you have to make a choice between these two players this week, Khalil Shakir or Amari Cooper, the Bills are going up against I had it and I'm sorry I lost it. The Bills are going up against this week in Week 14, the Los Angeles Rams on the road. Do you have a strong feeling here between Cooper or Shakir? If you can only play one, who would it be?
It would be Shakir, because we just haven't seen a lot of targets for these guys lately, but Shakir basically catches every target that comes his way. Like, he is just a freakishly efficient receiver, high catch percentage, high yards per target. I feel a little bit better about him, although doesn't it feel, Eric, like we are due for one of these Amari Cooper eruptions? We'll get where he is like,
it's that time of year, right?
yeah,
It's that
30
time of year.
yards, 40 yards, 213 yards. That's just kind of the way Amari Cooper rolls. But we just haven't seen the target counts for him to make us think that kind of a game is coming, unfortunately.
You know, regarding Amari Cooper, I was championing the whole Amari Cooper fan club in drafting season, because I said, and somebody posted this on X, and I don't want to take credit for it, but I can't give credit because I can't remember who posted it. But somebody was like, you know, every single year Cooper outperforms his ADP, and this should not be any different this year. Now, again, this was back when he was with Cleveland, right? But still, even though he's been traded to Buffalo, you still think wheels up for him, right? And I just feel like at some point, we're at week 14 right now. We play through week 17. There could be one, maybe two, as you pointed out, eruptions for Amari Cooper. God, and I'd hate to have him on the bench for that. Shakir does not have the upside of Amari Cooper. And especially if you're trying to win your league this week, or if you're trying to gain ground on a national competition, Cooper is the better start here over Shakir. I can't really make a good case for Shakir unless you're just like, you're playing keep away, you're the favorite, you just need some points. Then okay, I can see the case for Shakir. But other than that, no thanks.
Yeah, I'm with
ahead.
you. I mean, Cooper's always been so perennially underrated, and man, he goes from playing with Deshaun Watson to Josh Allen, and you would think that would just be this complete windfall for him, and hasn't really been the case.
The Lions were sacked on 3rd and 5. A Rashawn Gary sack has put the Lions to punt, and the Lions have done that. The Packers take over at their own 48, and it is suddenly 3rd down after an incomplete pass from Jordan Love to Jaden Reed. So it is 3rd and 5 from the Lions 47 for the Packers here. We'll let you know what happens going forward here as we are talking receivers. And as long as we're talking NFC North, let's stick with the NFC North. Who would you play this week, Pat? Would it be Rome Odunze, the number 9 overall pick in the 2024 draft? Would you play him, or Xavier Worthy, another fellow first-round pick for the Kansas City Chiefs? The Chiefs taking on the Chargers this week. Rome Odunze in Santa Clara to take on the 49ers. Who is the better wide receiver start?
I think it's Odunze. I think he's the better and more reliable player. And with the injury situation with the Bears, I think his target profile could very well be enhanced this year. I think even if DJ Moore and DeAndre Swift are healthy, I'd play Odunze. But if either of those guys are out, I think that really swings the pendulum to Odunze here.
We want to go to YouTube here for a couple of questions. Jimmy Williams, again, another fellow competitor in the KFFSC, tuning in tonight. Thank you so much, Jimmy. He says, have you guys talked about the Niners backfield yet? Next couple of games and rest of season could be interesting. Look, here's the thing. Isaac Guerrero is the guy that you want to be playing. I think he's a fine flex. I think he's a borderline running back too in your fantasy leagues going forward here. We said Patrick Taylor, Israel Abanikanda. Yeah, I mean, you could probably grab one of these guys. Pat and I both agree. It should be Taylor if you have the choice over the two of those guys. But what's your expectation for Guerrero? Let's just assume that it is Guerrero at least getting the lion's share of the touches in the backfield for the Niners. This is a really struggling team right now, Pat, and I don't want to overrate like, hey, Guerrero, he's the guy, right? He's your league winner based on McCaffrey not playing. I don't want to overrate that, but there is some inherent fantasy value in playing him each and every week from here on going forward.
I don't know if this is a situation, Eric, where we can just assume whoever they plug in is going to automatically smash every week. Like, remember early in the year when Jordan Mason, just a top 5 running back week after week after week, didn't matter who they were playing. Now, as you mentioned, like the offense hasn't been functioning as well. Like, I don't know if Trent Williams is going to play the rest of the season. Like, not only has he been banged up, but this tragic situation where he and his wife lost a baby. So, just terrible. And like, obviously one of the best offensive linemen in the game, and that offense just isn't going to work as well if Trent Williams isn't out there. So I still like Guerrero just based on volume. Like he's going to get 15 plus carries. And, we saw a little bit of him at the University of Wisconsin. Didn't get a lot of run because he was buried behind Braylon Allen most of his time there. But
and then he transfers to Louisville, so we really didn't get to see.
And even at Louisville, he split time with Jawar Jordan in his final year there. Like had a pretty good year, had like 11 touchdown runs, but a big, fast dude with maybe not a lot of wiggle, but if he can pick up the one cut thing and become a one cut running back, like he could fit the Shanahan offense really well. So I do think there's a lot of upside potential here, and he's a pretty good bet for 15 or more carries every game the rest of the way, I think. So not quite as excited about him as I was about Jordan Mason earlier in the year, but still pretty good setup for him.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was Ian Hartitz posted this on X. Like, if you didn't back up Christian McCaffrey with Jordan Mason, and if you didn't back up Jordan Mason with Elijah Mitchell, and if you didn't back up Elijah Mitchell with Isaac Guerrendo, and if you didn't back up Isaac Guerendo with Patrick Taylor, do you even fantasy, bro? And this is what we're looking at for high stakes leagues. Because I look at that and I'm like, no, you don't fantasy, bro. If you're not doing that, like that's a 12 team leagues with 20-man rosters. This is what you have to be doing. I have like one of the things that I have focused on over the last half decade, Pat, for my teams, and you can weigh in on this as well. The majority of my roster, my luxury spots, are spent on these one injury away type running backs, because if I can deploy 3, or in the FFPC, for those people who are playing that, I can't because I'm an employee, but for those people playing that can deploy 4 running backs on any given week, especially in the championship round, when you're trying to win a $1 million grand prize in the FFPC main event or the Fantasy Pros Championship, this is the pathway to do it. And I think, we're always looking for that guy that all he needs is a knee tweak or an ankle tweak, and he's in for a 25 touch week. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, even in these late weeks of the season, we are hoping that those guys will all of a sudden become lottery tickets.
Let's talk. I'll just bring you up to date. The Packers, and I didn't see it. There was an incomplete pass to Christian Watson on 3rd and 5. The Packers forced a punt. They have pinned the Lions back deep in their own territory. Prime has gone to commercial. It is 1st and 10 for Detroit with a 7-0 lead from their own 11. And as we pointed out, Pat, in the pregame, whoever runs the ball best in the first quarter probably going to win this game. David Montgomery, 3 carries for 18 yards. Not great, but okay. The leading rusher for the Packers, Jordan Love, 1 carry, 8 yards. Not boding well for the Packers here early on, but we'll see. There's a long way to go. We're still in the first quarter. Hey, let's get back to wide receivers in starts and sits. Quentin Johnston, who is a guy that has been downgraded and then praised and then shamed and then held up high again. It's been a roller coaster of a career for Quentin Johnston so far. Would you play him or Ray McCloud this week? Ray McCloud, a player that, not a lot of people have rostered, not a lot of people are starting, but when you look at it, with 6 teams on bye this week, is Ray McCloud a guy that you would start at Minnesota over Quentin Johnston, who is in Arrowhead this week?
So I think I've got both of these guys ranked like in the late 40s at wide receiver. I think I've got QJ like 46 and Ray 48, or 47 and 49, something. Like I've got QJ ranked a couple spots higher. Could understand if people had totally lost faith in him after the last couple of weeks, but he's tied to the better quarterback right now. And we've seen Kirk Cousins really struggle, even though the matchup seems pretty good against a Vikings team that gives it up through the air a lot more than on the ground. I think I'd still rather place my bet on QJ hitting on one of those plays where the defense forgets he's alive and he's wide open, which seems to be the only way he catches the ball these days, Eric, if there's no one within 20 yards of him.
And at this point, again, with 6 teams on bye, you're looking for, like, there's a switch that gets flipped, right? You start looking for the upside of the home run play rather than the volume guy. Ray McCloud is the volume guy, but how much volume is there? It might be better off trying to get that 40-yard touchdown from Quentin Johnston or that 10-yard touchdown from Quentin Johnston, the guy who is looked to in the red zone here. So I'm with you on that with Johnston. Let's move over to tight ends here. And there's a wider conversation I think we can have about this. Will Dissly for the Chargers this week is going to be in Arrowhead to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. Would you rather play him, or would you rather play, again, a tight end on the road against Brian Flores' defense in Minnesota? His name is the name of the former first-round pick out of Florida, Kyle Pitts. Is it Dissly or is it Pitts this week for you, Pat Fitzmaurice?
Oh, it's Dissly. I mean, Pitts has been on a milk carton the last couple of weeks, and Dissly going against a Chiefs defense that, as good as Kansas City is defensively, I think they've allowed the fourth most fantasy points to tight ends. They do give it up to tight ends, and Ladd McConkey is banged up. Yep. His status somewhat in doubt. Like I would have to imagine Justin Herbert is starting to lose confidence in Quentin Johnston. So enhanced target profile, I think, for Dissly in a pretty good matchup. I'd play him.
So you are playing. So let me ask you this, because I've seen, and we don't have to get into this from a dynasty standpoint. Dissly is a player that is more of a placeholder for the Chargers, right? And maybe they go with a tight end in the first round or the second round of the draft next year. But flip it over to Kyle Pitts. I always say he's one of the most polarizing players in the FFPC every year. Either you love him or you hate him. And if you love him, he's going in the first round, second round, third round, or whatever of drafts. And if you hate him, you don't have to worry about him because somebody else in your league is going to draft him before you. Is everyone officially done and out on Kyle Pitts after this season? Should they be?
I think so, and I was holding on probably as long as just about anyone, holding out hope, keeping that candle lit for him. But
Right.
it's been snuffed out, Eric. Like it's just they're really only playing him on passing downs now because he's just like a liability as a blocker. It's just, something has not clicked. And man, when I saw that guy in his final year at the University of Florida, like watching those games, I just I thought he was absolutely destined for stardom, and it has just not worked out. After that 1,000-yard season to start his career, like the first tight end since Mike Ditka 60 years earlier to have a 1,000-yard season as a rookie, and amazing that it just hasn't gone anywhere since then.
Frustrating, amazing, and shocking for a lot of people. And I hold him in a dynasty league right now. I can't get anything for Kyle Pitts, which is fine. And you know, it is what it is, and I'll hold on to him. Like at the worst case scenario, in a dynasty league, I'll hold on to him, and he's a guy that I'll plug in when my starting tight end is on a bye, and that's fine, you know. But I don't hold out. If somebody wants to give me something for him, I'll part with them, but I'm out. I've seen enough. I've bought into him as much as I could, but even at this point, if I'm Kyle Pitts' mother, I am selling him in dynasty. If I own him in that. Jimmy Williams wants to chime in on YouTube right now. He's got to pick a flex starter this week. It is Will Dissly against the Chiefs. Sean Tucker. Who is that? Tucker against Tampa. Sean Tucker's on the Buccaneers. I gotta look at that. Is it Trey Tucker?
Trey Tucker?
Yeah, because
the wide
Trey
receiver
Tucker plays the Buccaneers. Yeah. Thank you, Pat. This is why I have you on, for catches like that. Trey Tucker at Tampa, or NWI versus Jax. Who is that? Oh, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Too many abbreviations for me tonight.
Westbrook-Ikhine, yeah.
Is that who it is? Westbrook-Ikhine over Tucker and
so I guess it is.
Oh no, I take that back. He needs to bench
one.
Pat, he needs to bench one of these guys. So who are you benching out of those three?
Got it. Assuming that, man, even if Jacoby Myers doesn't play, I don't know if I would want to play. Not that I buy into Westbrook-Ikhine when he has scored a touchdown on 40% of his catches and like 21% of his targets, but the matchup against the Jaguars is pretty good. And I think you got to play Dissly, so Tucker would be the odd man out for me.
So at what point do we start regarding Westbrook-Ikhine? Touchdowns are not sticky, Pat. We don't trust touchdowns. Yet Westbrook-Ikhine scores touchdowns like you and I take breaths. Like it's wild. I played him last week out of desperation in one of my leagues, and I feel like I should probably keep doing this until he stops catching touchdowns.
Yeah, like it can't keep up, and it's kept up for 2 months. And
Yeah,
I actually
I
just
don't get it.
I found myself in an argument with one of our YouTube commenters who was like, we were arguing. He was arguing Nick Westbrook-Akine over Tyreek Hill. And I mean, and his argument was basically scoreboard,
Yeah.
and like it's a hard one to argue against, but obviously the process is not pointing you to Nick Westbrook-Akine in that comparison.
I think, I mean, like, listen, I can't explain it at this point. Westbrook-Akine to me is a guy that he's a top 35 guy for me this week based on touchdowns only. And you say, Walkie, that's not a sticky stat. Don't do that. I'm doing it because he's been doing it for the majority of the last 2 months. So I'm going to keep rolling with him. So as far as Disley versus Tucker versus Westbrook-Akine, I am benching Trey Tucker. Pat, is that how you're falling in on that as well? Bench Tucker? Okay. All right, let's go back to tight ends here. Pat Freiermuth or Cole Kmet? Which way would you roll on this? Pat Freiermuth this week is taking on, let's see, that's the Steelers. So Pat Freiermuth is at home against the Browns. Cole Kmet is in Santa Clara to take on the Niners. Who are you playing?
If DJ Moore plays, I would play Pat Freiermuth, but if DJ Moore is out, I think I would pivot to Cole Kmet.
Okay. And you'll be able to make that choice because obviously these players are not playing until Sunday. And I would wholeheartedly support that as far as Freiermuth versus Kmet goes. Kmet is kind of an underrated guy because he, even with all these wide receivers and DeAndre Swift and everything, he has still been at least steadily involved in that offense. And if you look at what the Steelers did last week, it was a lot of Pickens. It was a lot of Calvin Austin. It was some Pat Freiermuth. So I get where you're coming from there with Kmet over Freiermuth. Gesicki or Noah Gray? God, Noah Gray, the bane of the existence for all Travis Kelce owners out there. If you have to play one this week, Gesicki goes down to Big D to take on the Cowboys. Noah Gray is at home against the Chargers. Normally I'd say, hey, it's a slam dunk Gesicki. Now I'm not so sure, Pat.
Yeah, another guy, Gesicki, who I'm forced to jam into my Scott Fishbowl lineup because of all the buys. But I would love to recommend him, but I think I'd rather go with Noah Gray just because he's consistently getting targets. And those targets, well, I mean, both guys have excellent quarterbacks. But Gesicki has kind of disappeared from the Bengals offense, and it's hard to see him getting 7 or 8 targets when T. Higgins is healthy and he and Chase are dominating the target scene for the Bengals.
It is wheels up for the Bengals right now. There are no injuries there, and so it's tough to trust Gesicki. You look over at, I'm looking at this on FantasyPros.com, a write-up from one Pat Fitzmaurice on Noah Gray right now. Pat Fitzmaurice points out 4 for 58, 4 for 66, 4 for 23. That's over his last 3 weeks. He gets the Chargers this week. Tight end premium formats. It's tough to sit Noah Gray if your best option is Mike Gesicki. So I'm definitely on board for that as well. We got a couple of minutes left. We'll go rapid fire literally through these quarterbacks here. Tua Tagovailoa or Russell Wilson? Tagovailoa at home against the Jets. Russell Wilson at home against the Browns. Pat, which one are you starting?
I have Tua ranked 1 spot higher. That is almost in the coin flip zone.
So it's very, very close. Why do you, just curiously, why is Tagovailoa a little bit higher than Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, like, Tua's been pretty hot lately. I think he's been over 300 the last couple of weeks. And I know, obviously it was a lot of garbage time in the Green Bay game, but no Sauce Gardner, it looks like, for the Jets. And it just doesn't seem like the Jets defense has been pretty tough against the pass this season, despite all their struggles. But I just, who knows what their motivation level is. And we know what sort of weaponry Tua has. I like his play caller. It's a more wide open offense than Pittsburgh's.
I would totally agree with that. And when you're splitting hairs, these are the things you have to look at. So I'm with you on Tagovailoa over Russell Wilson, even though it is close. Another close one for me, Geno Smith on the road in the desert against the Cardinals, or Matthew Stafford at home against the Bills. I lean towards Geno Smith here. What say you?
Yeah, I think I've got Geno ranked one spot higher. That's another one that is really close. And normally I feel pretty confident about Stafford whenever Kupp and Nakua are both healthy. It didn't really work out against the Saints last week, but I know Stafford's a little banged up too. So I think I'd go with Geno.
Geno is the man here from both of us. Kirk Cousins or Caleb Williams? I talked about Caleb Williams earlier in the broadcast. I think he is out for a big week against San Francisco this week. Kirk Cousins, man, I know it's a revenge game at Minnesota this week. I don't see it. I'm playing Caleb Williams here.
He's at risk for an in-game benching, Eric, like another pick or two. He could be out of there.
Can you imagine the Vikings fans' reaction? He goes back to Minnesota and he gets benched in game for Penix in his return to the Twin Cities. But you're right. He is at risk for that.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's Caleb, I think, is a pretty easy call here.
Caleb Williams over Kirk Cousins. All right, we got to fly. Pat Fitzmaurice at Fitz_FF. Fantasy Pros is where you can find all his content, fantasypros.com. Pat, give us just a little taste of what you're doing, everything for Fantasy Pros. You're doing a lot of shows as well.
Yeah, hopefully everyone will check out the Fantasy Pros Football podcast, which airs pretty much every day of the week. I think I'm on 4 out of the 5 episodes. And, the Fantasy Pros Dynasty podcast. Check out my rankings, my weekly rankings and tiers article. And people can find me on Twitter at Fitz_FF or on Blue Sky at Fitz-FF.
There you go.
And Eric, thank you, my fellow cheesehead. Always great to join you, brother. Love chopping it up with you. Really appreciate you having me on, man. And we got to get together for beer soon.
Oh, I'm on board with that. And I might be drowning my sorrows in a potential loss for the Packers tonight as Christian Watson catches a 21-yard pass. He fumbles. The Lions have recovered. They take over. 1st and 10 is at their own 46. I could be wrong on this. And they take over. Sam Laporta catches a 10-yard pass. Lions on the move again. Here's hoping the Packers can pull this out, but we will see going forward. At Fitz_FF, fantasypros.com is where to check out everything. Pat, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll do this again real soon.
I hope so. See you, Eric.
Thank you to Pat Fitzmaurice and our producer, Matt Deutsch. We'll be back next Thursday at 7 p.m. with Rotoballer's Corbin Young joining me as my co-host. FFPC Weekly Challenge, myffpc.com. Check it out right now. You could still play in the lineup, in the challenge that locks at 1 o'clock p.m. on Sunday afternoon. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Enjoy this Packers-Lions game. Go, Pack, go on Thursday Night Football. I'll talk with you again next week.